everything sort of revolves around the garden. It's actually become such a central part of our life.
I have loved having people come into the garden. It's been a great community builder.
When we want to hang out with our neighbors, it's in the garden.
And my food forest is ripple effect.
This is the Enchanted Cottage Garden.
Kathleen Huffman was a sustainable landscape designer that worked on these gardens. These two gardens are part of the Solano Sustainable Backyard program that was generously funded by the Solano County Water Agency. Enchanted Cottage Garden and Ripple Effect are located in Vallejo, California, and were installed in May of 2017 as part of a series of educational workshops that teach people to use water efficiently, build healthy soil, grow food, and provide habitat. So these are 3-year-old gardens now that obviously provide beauty and a place to heal. The homeowners agree to tour the gardens yearly to inspire and educate others. Lydia and Neilsen agreed to come out to tour these gardens, and we really were honored to have her with us because she has a way of explaining complicated topics in a way that is easy to understand, and she provides people realistic tools and empowers them to be part of the solution.
This white gutter drains into this little shorty here, and that all drains down into there. Go on Google Earth or get a measuring tape and calculate out the area of that roof footprint so that you could figure out in a 2-inch storm how much water is that, in a 6-inch storm how much water is that, or throughout the year how much water is that. Going into a pipe at the base, and then this pipe is running underground past the apricot tree here, all the way to here, and that pipe is angling downhill. So even though the landscape is flat or even coming uphill a little bit, our water transport is coming just slightly downhill, and it's dumping down low into a swale that we can't see here because it's filled with wood chips. But look at how healthy and lush everybody is here. We have these lavenders.
I've always really loved lavender. I grew up with it. Now I also cook with it a lot. And Jacob makes a really amazing lavender lemonade.
So all of this water then is seeping and passively infiltrating to nourish this whole front yard. And it's plenty far away from the house, so this is not going to affect the foundation or anything. There's not a lot of excess water buildup right around the house.
There's always something in bloom, always something in bloom, which I think is really important because it's like a responsibility to the hummingbirds.
Really lush grapes and this fig and a goji berry and an avocado down further. I know, the wood chip thing has to catch on. One thing that people notice about permaculture gardens right away is the wood chips. They're an amazing source of carbon and organic matter, and almost all the time you can get them for free. And when we cover our soil, we're protecting it. We're protecting it from the wind, we're protecting it from the sun, and we're protecting it from the blasting effects of raindrops, like raindrops just falling out of the sky, landing on the soil. They really break apart the soil structure. But we put the wood chips on top, and then we plant all kinds of plants, and then the wood chips are creating this really nice protected environment underneath. So we look under here, it's moist, it's very wood chippy. Ooh, and we can see that there's a process happening where these wood chips are breaking down into soil. Think about the difference between a soil with a lot of organic matter. With organic matter and soil organisms, it creates this spongy texture versus a soil that's just dry, powdery mineral that can't hold and it can't support the life in the same way. So here we are at the far end of this swale that's taking water from half of the roof and bringing it underground like this. And this whole swale is lined by trees with a couple of grapes. It's that the trees are able to access that water really effectively. Swales can be a little bit deep for some shallow rooted plants. They're not ideal for your lettuce crop, right? But for your deeper rooted perennials, they grow their roots into that saturated soil zone and they can draw that water up. An umbrella is nice, but a tree is like many times more cooling because of the way that it's moving water from the ground up into the air. And that humidity also gives us a more comfortable environment to hang out in. So planting trees and providing them with a reliable source of water in the ground is one of the best ways to cool your environment.
I wanted to have food, but I didn't want it to look like a farm in my front yard.
So this is a pineapple guava. They have this really beautiful green side and then a silvery side, and so there's a nice effect with the light. Sweet, a little bit tangy, and they're really high in vitamins and nutrients and not super fussy. But you can kind of put them in a hard spot if you're patient, and they will eventually make their way into a nice full bush for you. Well, here's another wonderful permaculture plant friend, and this one is called Jerusalem artichoke. This is a really great plant that you can make a fermented drink out of to nourish your own digestive flora, and the soil flora is being nourished around the plant as well. This is a native milkweed right here, and then these two right here are non-native milkweeds. So if you have some natives and some non-natives, when you see the natives go dormant, just cut back your non-natives. The new growth will start again in the spring, and they'll actually be healthier from that heavy cutback. And that'll help maintain the health of the monarch butterfly population as well.
It's also a gathering place for our neighbors. At least two neighbors who I know were inspired by this and have done the same kind of a garden at their house too. And we trade food with those two neighbors. I can't imagine a day where we didn't come out here, because you just discover something new every single day.
I had a goal arise, and that was to build good soil first, take out the lawn, and then to put in different layers of plants and invite in the bees and the birds. Those were my two main goals. But then to work outward from my property and hopefully have an impact on the neighborhood.
Well, right here we have a few of my favorite plants, and I'm going to start by talking about comfrey. Comfrey has so much to offer. First of all, it's got a really big, fat, juicy taproot. And that's one of those ones that'll punch down through hard, compacted earth. In fact, it doesn't really thrive in sandy soil. You know, people will say sometimes, oh, comfrey, it spreads, it's so aggressive, you know, and well, okay, if you plant it somewhere and then you dig it up and you want to move it somewhere else, it will come back. My advice on that is just put it where you want it and don't move it, unless you want more. So it's also a beautiful mulch plant because you can just come in. May I chop a little bit of your comfrey, Julie? So I'll just come in and I look for the older stalks. I try to let the little ones grow up and be bigger. But you just chop it up, spread it around on the ground, and you're good to go. And you know, by tomorrow it'll be brown, and in a couple of weeks you won't even be able to recognize it as leaves anymore. Now it's sharing all that nutrient. Well, here is Julie's roof water system, and the roof is just sloped to this hole right here where they've constructed a little catchment, and then these downspouts coming down in and then filling this barrel. And then this barrel is plumbed in the back to the one next to it, so they both fill at the same time. And then Julie uses hoses and spigots in order to water whatever she needs to water in the garden. Here we are again in another cool diversity hotspot. It's like everywhere we turn here in Julie's garden. These are one of my favorite plants right here. This is mullein. Each of these lovely little rosettes of leaves is going to make a tall flower stalk. The flowers are yellow. You can take the whole stalk and just shake it all over, and you get seeds going everywhere, and you can totally self-seed your garden. I've even heard of people dipping them in wax and using them as torches once they're dry. Here's another medicine right here, yarrow. And this one, I like to dry the leaves and grind them up, and I put it in a spice jar. And when you have a cut and the cut is just kind of moist on its own, you sprinkle that dry powdered leaf in there. It sticks real nicely in the wet tissue. And man, is it good at just healing things up. We have some sunflowers here. When they open, they'll have that whole bunch of disc flowers and the ray flowers and this smorgasbord buffet for all the different kinds of insects. And then this one looks like a hummingbird favorite where they can get their little beaks in there. And this whole area is going to transform from a pretty low, diverse environment into a very tall, diverse environment over the next couple of months. So here we have one of the irrigation outlets, or the Greywater outlets for Julie's laundry to landscape system. And this is just a little, irrigation valve box buried in a mulched basin. And so every time Julie does a load of laundry, water comes out of this box. And so the water then passively infiltrates into all these wood chips, soaks them. The wood chips are being broken down, their carbon is being consumed by the microorganisms and then incorporated into the surrounding soil. And what I love about the Greywater systems is that you can take really, really bad compacted soil. You dig this little basin or swale or ark, you put the little outlet chamber in there, you bring in the water and the wood chips, and that attracts a whole bunch of soil microbes, and then they start doing their thing. And from this very small feature that introduces these two essential things, carbon and water, a whole new ecology emerges in the soil. So here we are in another little botanical diversity hotspot right here in Julie's garden. I really want to talk about these fava beans for a few minutes because this is a stand that's now mature and making its beans. And look, I just split open a pod. But look, isn't this beautiful? Look at how, like peas in a pod, only they're fava beans in a pod. Harvest them when they're hard and brown. But if you want to eat them, this is the time right now. But this plant is such a giver. When the leaves are younger, they make a really good, kind of spinach replacement. And the flowers, which are white and black, very elegant, first of all, and they taste kind of like cucumbers, I think, like a cross between cucumbers and pea shoots or something. The plant grows little homes for colonies of bacteria right on its roots. Ah, yes. So this is one of the best friends you can have in your garden. These nodules are full of the bacteria that are taking the nitrogen out of the nitrogen gas, absorbed by the fava bean, but also by the asparagus, by the pomegranate, by the ground cover, by the blueberry. I'm seeing a little bit of this kind of wild weedy mallow. It's actually another one of these edible ones. We also have these little wild strawberries, and then these things. They're little, but they're tasty. Oh. In our permaculture gardens, we want to make sure that we are eating the things that we're growing. You discover it as you go, but it's a side of the journey that you need to be engaged in and understand it.
Yes, right next door, she took out her lawn, she put in wood chips, she's put in butterfly plants and bee plants, and she's slowly building hers. And then just last weekend, my neighbor across the street put in sheet mulching, the cardboard and wood chips, and is going to put some things in too. So it's happening. And the connections around gardening, it's always something to share.